We are going to the live stream. That's great. Um, the second book on our list is Everything to Play For: How Video Games Are Changing the World, by Mariam Did. So I'd love to invite Mariam to introduce the book and maybe give us a little reading.
What a privilege to be here amongst such awesome distinguished authors, as well as all of you legends, the radical booksellers. Honestly, I feel like we authors get the cred, but you guys are doing the heavy lifting. So thank you so much. This is really quite and a very very special moment. Yeah, and so that's kind of what I've been struggling with generally in life is attempting to get the left to take video games seriously as a place for that requires a huge amount of attention. And when we progressives haven't been there, the right most definitely has been, and has been organizing quite intensely. And I would even argue that if it wasn't for like Gamergate scandal, Trump wouldn't have been elected in 2016 and so on. And so I found myself kind of in London squats circa 2012 2014, just trying to get people to care about this and so on. But so it's been a long struggle. So thank you so much. I feel like very justified now that we're finally here, even although too late. As many of you know, video games are bigger than music and film industries combined. So it's just like this massive cultural space that is not necessarily taken seriously for its like artistic and political depth that it should be. So I was super thankful for Verso that that finally we got a book on games in their catalog. I hope that this is the first of many. And yeah, I'm 2 days away now from a year of it being out there, and just obviously incredibly thankful with the reception, and I've kind of been traveling the world with it, and everywhere in different parts of the world is just that everybody finds their own meanings with this, whether it's of course radicalization, whether it's the art, whether it is of course for me the biggest final boss is the mode of production. I used to organize in the union space for the games industry, which then also is inspiring many young people who wouldn't even think of unions to actually join some. And the fact that of course the existence of the video games industry is only there for the blood, sweat and tears of the global south. So the book is kind of structured like a video game. It becomes more and more complex or like the themes become more complex and maybe more depressing as the book goes on. And then you're sort of left to see whether you've been like defeated by the final boss, or whether you feel like you're more hopeful. So the cover is also this motif of whether it's a sunrise or a sunset. So it's up to the reader to I guess decide at the end of reading it. Yes. So okay, I'll do a couple of paragraphs from the conclusion. If I think I have maybe 2 minutes, so let's see, and hopefully I'll leave you with this sort of kind of an encouragement to really take these spaces seriously. So yes, politics have traditionally been assigned to analog spaces, streets, libraries, pubs, union meeting rooms, and laundrettes. Increasingly, though, virtual spaces are becoming territories for political organizing and scheming, often affecting what happens in real life governmental buildings. Instead of viewing gaming as some sort of deranged aberration and a distraction from real life, realize that for millions, gaming represents a very real means of communication about key subjects in their lives, and without doubt about the wider world. The space in between ranges from reactionary forces using their influence for harmful ends to enabling the purest, kindest sides of humanity. Even today, children's analog games hint at that possibility too, providing a clue as to what a more equitable society could look like. We must wrest gaming from the shark jaws of extractivism for every kid or adult who wishes to live out their most outrageous fantasies, for every worker killing time during their lunch hour, or taking 3 days off to enjoy plunging into imaginary digital worlds and leaving their mark there. For its communities, for its art, for its clumsiness, enduring quirks, and vast universes, it is everything for some of us and is becoming increasingly influential in the lives of those who don't partake. Gaming deserves to be rescued from its self-destructive ways that poison the most visionary parts of this captivating field to be unleashed from the thorny vines of capitalism that are smothering it. There exists on the horizon a possible revolutionary future where all of us can lie on the beach, cocktail in hand, with few cares in the world. But to get there, we must first overcome the obstacles and win many fights, including those that manifest themselves in a myriad of black mirrors. And for those who prefer a session of Elden Ring to the beach, there is everything to be won by challenging the current crooked, bloated, and monopolized methods of game making and distribution. In the era of non-stop productivity contests, when work seemingly never ends and leisure blurs insidiously into minting coins for others, we demand the right to be lazy with pride. And to quote my beloved Raymond Williams, to be truly radical is to make hope possible rather than despair convincing. So this is my love letter about this grotesque, messed up, kind of fascinating, really increasingly very influential book. And I'm just terribly thankful that your eyes have been on it. And so thanks.
Thank you so much. I'll now invite the author of Intervals, Marianne Brooker, to speak about the book.
Thank you so much. I just echo all of that. I feel really, really grateful to be here, especially with authors of books that I have read recently and really, really loved. It's a big honor. I'm in a really stormy barn in the middle of the Peak District, and my internet is cutting out a tiny bit. So if I freeze, I'm sorry in advance. But I have Intervals here, and it's I suppose a personal essay about living with my mum at the end of her life. My mum was brilliant and weird in all kinds of ways that I explore in the book. And she had multiple sclerosis, and she died when she was 49 by stopping eating and drinking. And the book is really a kind of exploration of choice in that kind of context, like the degree to which we can have choice in that context, how to make space for one another, how we cared for one another in that time, and what, I don't know, how to make a more livable world for one another is the kind of the ultimate thing I think I was trying to wrestle with through that, the lens of that quite personal experience and story. So I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 2, which is called Mother of Invention. Care is its neighbour, love, made solid. It's in the touch and the weft, the holding. Anne Boyer describes how, during her cancer treatment, friends sent cannabis popcorn wrapped in the poet Diane de Prima's hand-me-down yoga pants. Cancer was hard, she writes, but she had these inventive forms of love to soften it, even if these loves were of the extra-legal and unofficial kind, inadequate and provisional. Love like this is a comradely patchwork, more comforting, thrilling even, for its particularity and marginality. The whole hallmark industry of condolence and celebration is found wanting when weighed against our friends' ingenuity. My mum knew love like this. When she couldn't afford her first electric wheelchair, her friends and I clubbed together to buy one on eBay. One friend made a seat cushion and armrests from a cosmic blue fabric emblazoned with gold stars. We stuck a transfer to the wheelchair's old heavy battery that read, "Powered by witchcraft." I have a photo of her whizzing up the hill by her cottage, a shooting star with her dog trotting beside her, her new wig shining in the evening sun. She couldn't be contained or curtailed. She was a woman drawn to the extra-legal and unofficial, to the DIY and the don't fuck with me. Before you can understand how she died, you have to understand how she lived. Sick and poor, she made a workshop of herself. When her hair fell out, she learned about wig making and tracked down cheaper versions of her favourite styles from foreign wholesalers. When her teeth fell out, she learned how to mould dentures from a bright white and pink polymer. She duct taped her feet to a tricycle so that she could feel the wind in her hair. She made an eye patch from an old bra. Necessity, they say, is the mother of invention, but there's something else in this mix. A defiant kind of self-love, each act a refusal, each invention a gift. These contrivances were a means of survival in material terms, and in more personal, psychological, even spiritual terms. They gave her a sense of vocation, pleasure, creation, and repair. More than symptom management, she created a pattern for a whole other way of life, world-making against the world, surviving within and against the material conditions of scarcity. A real cottage industry, she fused tiny glass fury in a miniature kiln that fit in the microwave. The small beads of coloured glass fused together to create marbled pendants. She painted signs in the style you might find on an old gypsy wagon, bright broad brushstrokes against a solid black background. She picked and dried the flowers from her garden with great care, setting the petals in resin to make jewellery. Crafting together taught me how to grieve as well as how to live. This fury of making and remaking, this flare and fade. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll now invite Skye Arundhati Thomas and Isabella Scott to talk about Pleasure Gardens.
Hello, and thank you so much. And again, as everyone else has said, congratulations to everyone here. It's such a lovely group to be a part of. And thank you to the Lighthouse and to all the bookshops and booksellers and small presses that continue to support these books. Because sometimes I wonder who's reading us, but at least you're there and you are in our corner, and that means everything. So thank you. Pleasure Gardens is a book that I co-wrote with Isabella Scott. Isabella, maybe you have to say hi so they can see you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Isabella, co-writer.
And it takes the 219-day blackout of 2019 as its primary subject in Kashmir, which is a northern territory occupied by the nation state of India at this time. And in 2019, its special constitutional status was revoked, and what went on to be one of the largest kind of internet communications blackouts was imposed. And I was in India at the time. I'm Indian. And we were kind of only getting information trickling in, and there was a lot of chaos and misinformation. And in some ways, what we see now in the news feed was something that we've been living through for quite a long time. And, and even back then, I would sometimes feel like I'm from the future. And in that chaos and fake news and kind of the true insanity of the propaganda machine, we set up on this task to still the newsfeed, to find some order in it, to make some sense of it. Even though I wrote about the crisis as it was unfolding live, when Isabella and I began researching this book and like really just going through all of the several days and how events unfolded, I learned things that I had never heard of before. So yeah, we tried to take on a very large wing of the Indian propaganda machine. And what came out of it is a two-part book. So the first part is a log, where we just try to create like a timeline of events of the first 15 days of the blackout, which is where things intensified. And then the second part, I guess, we kind of hold the reader's hand a little bit and tell the story. And we're joined by 3 photographers from Kashmir who were the founders of the first kind of women-run photo collective called Her Pixel Story, and they continue to be some of the only girls photographing and photojournaling from Kashmir even today. So they kind of contributed 3 very beautiful photo essays that you can find in the book, and now Isabella's gonna show you them.
I'll speak so I can be on the feed. So this is the book, and as Skye described, it's in 2 parts, and there are 3 photo essays, which I'll give you a glimpse of. And so the first is by Ufaq Fatima, the second is by Nawal Ali, and the third is by Zainab.
Sorry, didn't cue that properly. But I'm going to begin the reading. So usually when we read out the log, because it's kind of while we wrote it and we would write drafts and swap them in this kind of quite amazing cathartic co-writing experience, we realized that it was theater. It was like a piece of theater that was writing itself simply in the act of putting it together and putting it in chronological order. So we do this thing when we read it out a little bit dramatically, and we hope that we don't break Zoom trying to take turns reading out sentences, but let's try. Okay. Sunday, 4th August, 2019. It's Sunday, and more paramilitary police are headed towards Srinagar, the capital of Jammu and Kashmir.
Reportedly, they are arriving in truckfuls.
On the edges of the city, barricades have sprung up. The capital is being cut up into small blocks with checkpoints on all sides. It's as if Srinagar is being amended, reorganized, redrawn.
We have never seen anything like this, a Kashmiri professor tells a journalist from the caravan. They have remapped Srinagar, he goes on.
The professor calls it a psychological drill. It is an attempt to redraw the city in the minds of its residents.
The journalist from the caravan hears on the security analyst grapevine that the strategy was first devised by Israeli army contractors.
It's an export from another occupation.
Today, on Sunday, 4th of August 2019, the barricades are disorientating. The paramilitary police asks residents for permission slips to pass checkpoints.
Gupkar Road, the power avenue where many politicians live, is inaccessible. But Gupkar Road merges into Residency Road, where the Sunday market has materialized in parts, with its carts of fruits and shoes, ice creams, and scarves.
I see people buying cigarettes in stacks. A journalist from the Telegraph writes in a diary piece, which will be published online 3 days from now, once he's exited the region to file it. He goes on, the bakery shelves are thinning by the minute. Its loaves of bread are vanishing the fastest.
Today, the paramilitary are dressed in riot gear.
They coast down Srinagar's narrow lanes in helmets and rubber kneecaps, carrying automatic guns.
It's the afternoon, and news circulates of a cabinet meeting scheduled by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to take place on Monday morning. An important announcement is expected, says a national newspaper.
Journalists, also confined by the city's new barricades, ask for explanations. Most officials parrot the army and the police, threats of Pakistani infiltration along the line of control, a militarized boundary that separates India-occupied Kashmir from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
Others are more nonchalant, business as usual. After all, escalation is the status quo in Kashmir.
We are always on alert, a government official says. The 35,000 new troops, which arrived in the area just last week, he explains, are just for the maintenance of law and order.
It's 8 p.m. and finally, a curfew is announced by the J&K government.
But the word curfew is not used.
Restrictions imposed under Section 144 have been implemented across the Srinagar district till further orders.
Section 144 of the Indian Criminal Procedure Code allows a magistrate of a state or assembly to prohibit the unlawful assembly of 4 or more people in public space.
There shall be no movement of the public, says the order.
Section 144 also grants magistrates the authority to block all communications, including internet access.
Around 9 p.m., communication services begin to drop.
Local cell phones are hit first. No data, no network signal.
Then landlines stop working. Soon, international numbers go dark. Like at the throw of a switch somewhere, internet gone, WhatsApp gone, connectivity gone. The signal towers have collapsed, Thakur writes in his diary.
Even this is not unusual for the occupation. India orders the most internet shutdowns in the world. Hundreds of these are in India-occupied Kashmir specifically. During this year alone, 2019, there have been 53.
When Section 144 is used to block communication, the magistrate is obliged to make the legal basis of the order public. This has not been done. The blackout appears to be Kashmir-wide.
Tonight, 4th of August 2019, the shutdown is comprehensive. As the minutes inch towards midnight, the government systematically suspends phone lines and internet, 2G and 4G mobile internet service, landlines, broadbands, Wi-Fi.
Over 12 million people have been cut off from the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to you both for that reading. I will invite Gabrielle de la Puente and Zarina Mohammed to introduce their book, Poor Artists.
Hi, I'm Zarina Mohammed. I'm gonna introduce Poor Artist and give you like a little too long didn't read versions. But quickly, I want to say thank you to the Alliance of Radical Booksellers. Thank you, Lighthouse Books, and thank you to the judges. It is really lovely to be here in very good company. Um, so Poor Artist is about a fictional character called Quest Talukdar and her quest through the world of contemporary art. Quest is an aspiring artist, and as she bumbles along on her hero's journey, she has to try and figure out how to make art, how to make a living, and make a name for herself. Are those three things compatible or even possible under capitalism? How do you balance a desire to make art against the impossibility of the art world's demands? We interviewed people across the art world and turned their accounts into Quest's narrative. And what emerges is a portrait of what it means to live a creative life in Britain today and the variety of things that can get in your way. And then I'm going to hand over to my collaborator, Gabrielle, to read a bit from the book. Bye.
Hello. Yeah, as Zarina said, we interviewed like real alive people and turn their transcripts into dialogue in the book. But I am gonna read a section where the person we spoke to was dead. Because we spoke to the ghost of Gustave Courbet, the 19th century French painter. And you just have to believe me. So this is a scene in which Gustave Courbet is an Uber driver, and he's sort of like grabbed Quest and he's in the taxi. Okay. They're in a taxi. Courbet pulled over on Bayswater Road, opened the car door, and the smoke clung to him as he stormed away. I had to chase him. I didn't want to be late. And then this is Gustave. The world is violent, constantly. Absolute monarchy is violent. Money is violent. Private property is violent, as are monuments that symbolize the state's love for violence. Any and all systems of power are based on brute force and violence. Look at this gentleman. There was a man on the floor outside of Queensway Tube Station with a sign asking for money. Your precious government could organize the country so that nobody has to want for anything, but it chooses violence instead. How many people die in police custody? How many sick people are left to rot? How many die trying to enter the country? You can't answer because it's easier for you to look away. But doing nothing is also violent. In fact, I would say it is worse because it is a violence that believes itself to be innocent. He turned suddenly, and I walked right into him. I didn't understand why he was upset. He said that the Commune's Federation of Artists was responsible for preserving monuments back in the day. Pieces of the statue were melted down to be made into coins for the new republic. Destruction is not an endpoint. The Russian revolutionary comrade Mikhail Bakunin said as much when he declared that the urge for destruction is also a creative urge. The Spanish revolutionary comrade Buenaventura Durruti said, "We have no fear of ruins. We carry a new world here in our hearts." The Spanish brigades could not fight the fascists from a moral high ground. Violence is an equal reaction to state-sanctioned violence. Sometimes what you need is an action that breaks the paralysis around the problem to prove change is not beyond our influence. Wasn't it Ursula K. Le Guin who once said, "We live in capitalism, its power seems inescapable, so did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance to change often begins in art." You ain't even alive at the same time. You do not know the divine right of ghosts. The problems you face are not fated. They are not an inexorable force, and evil is not a biological law. Evil is made, and the same evil can be destroyed. And violence, he looked to the left and to the right to see if anyone was listening, can be a revolutionary action. Violence is a political tactic anarchists throughout history have used. The general strike, the boycott, protest, squatting, sabotage, arson, riot, assassination. I step back. Gustav, mate, I'm a fucking Muslim. I can't be casually chatting about terrorism on the street or in the home or anywhere. Don't be so childish. You think terrorism was invented in 2001? Throughout the 19th century, anarchists were a government's worst nightmare, and rightly so. If governments insist on installing themselves, maybe it is best if they live in fear of the people they claim to govern. Better than us living in fear of them, no? Violence and anarchism sometimes takes the name of propaganda par le fait, propaganda by the deed. Certainty makes it seem as if there's nothing we can do about our discontent. The anarchist does something that shocks people in order to catalyze revolution by shattering the illusion that this reality is fixed. In 1885, the Chicago Tribune wrote, "When a tramp asks you for bread, put arsenic on it and he will not trouble you anymore." Lucy Parsons published a response in the same newspaper. It read, "Let every dirty, lousy tramp arm himself with a revolver or a knife and lay in wait on the steps of the palaces of the rich and stab or shoot the owners as they come out. Let us kill them without mercy, and let it be a war of extermination." Okay, I'll stop before I get put on a list.
Thanks to you both for that introduction and reading. I will introduce the next book, which is Race and Education, Reproducing White Supremacy in Britain by Professor Calwent Popal, who also can't be with us today. This book asks the questions and kind of propose answers to the questions: why is our education system unequal? How does race play a part? And is Britain still institutionally racist? The book highlights how classrooms and lecture halls are the center of perpetuating white privilege and how racism continues to exist in Britain. And yeah, I think it's a great read for anyone who wants to kind of get a real overview of like the history of that like reproduction through education. I will now invite Danny Dorling to introduce Seven Children to us.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here, and I'm particularly glad to come after Zarina and Gabriella talked about the voice of a ghost, because it makes it easier for me to try to explain what Seven Children is about. The book is a mix of fiction and non-fiction, and that turned out to be a very hard thing to do, which I'm not going to try and do again, but I really am happy to be here. So some people like what I managed to make. I didn't manage to make it on my own. Lara at Hearst is a brilliant editor. The thing she did was to cut a third of the book out before it gets to anybody else, which is the kind of thing which people who write we really should be very thankful for. And Rose Bell copy edited it. Now, the reason I want to mention the people involved in the book is that if you write a book which is a mixture of fiction and non-fiction, it's very hard to copy edit and correct it, because you can't actually know whether the things are true or not in the book. Let me just read you a little bit to try to explain why I did this just from the very start of the book, and then I'll wrap up, and I promise to finish with it within 4 or 5 minutes. The 7 imaginary children in this book are each a statistical construct. What they have in common is that each was born in the autumn of 2018 in the United Kingdom. This was when the UK was at its most unequal, a more unfair place to be born within than at any time since the 1930s, and more unequal than anywhere else in Europe. All 7 children turned 4 shortly after Liz Truss was briefly Prime Minister, and first went to school a year later in September 23. They'll now be 7, by the way. The years 2018 to 2023 were some of the toughest British children and their families since the Second World War. There was growing destitution at the bottom and sharply curtailed living standards at the top. And although the children in this book are representative of the full span of British society, they're from neither the very richest nor the very poorest households. None of the 7 are in families well off enough not to be badly affected by the cost of living crisis, austerity, by Brexit, by a pandemic, and then the high inflation that's marked all these children's formative years. In the UK, especially from the early summer of 2019, through to a few months before the start of the pandemic in March 2020, levels of satisfaction with life and happiness plummeted to the lowest level recorded. Fewer people thought that things in life were worthwhile than had ever been recorded before in the government surveys. Levels of anxiety rose and became very high. This was all before the pandemic. If you can remember back to those months when Boris Johnson was taking over the Conservative Party. So it's dark, dark days. Why did I try to write a book in this way? My argument is that none of us can actually know a cross-section of society. None of us are gregarious enough or have life experiences that we can live among the poorest and live among the richest and live among the middle and live among the people who are between the middle and the top and between the middle and the bottom. We have millions of inhuman statistics produced, which are now largely routinely ignored. People fought for these in the 1990s for government to have to release this data. And for somebody like me, it's an absolute tragedy to watch it being published each year and hardly reported on. One reason is we're tired of this, we're bored of the same old story. But the other is that statistics are humanity with the kind of tears wiped off. You know, they are not interesting. And so what Seven Children does is create actual children and their families from these statistics, but presents them as if they were real. And many publishers turned the draft of the book down, which is why I'm happy to be here. They'll probably write to do it. But my favorite thing that happened in 3 cases when it was turned down is I was asked if I had permission from the families of the children to describe their circumstances. And I had to explain that the children are not real. There were 14 million children born in 2018, or alive in 2018, sorry. All I did was divide them into 7 groups of 2 million and take the one in the middle of each, and then try to describe in fiction terms a few days in their lives and how they got through, what they did they have a holiday, could they have birthday presents. Perhaps the most shocking statistic, if you're not aware, is that roughly 1 in 3 children in Britain no longer have a summer holiday at all. But maybe equally shocking, the child at the very top of the 7, the child in the middle of the top 7th, only 1 million children are better off than them. Their mum and dad runs a corner shop. They have an income of about £50,000 before tax. That's what a rich kid is in Britain. And we're so incredibly unequal that many people are simply not aware that if your mum gets 25,000 a year and your dad gets 25,000 a year, you're actually better off than 6 out of 7 other children in this country. Thank you ever so much for putting me on the list. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Danny. And last but not least, I'd like to invite Jake Hall to talk about their book, Shoulder to Shoulder.
Hello, thank you so much to everybody. Yeah, the judges, to Lighthouse, to the Alliance of Radical Booksellers. This was the list that I really hoped I would be on. So it feels, yeah, really great to be in this company. So Shoulder to Shoulder started out as a pretty ambitious project to basically do a history of queer solidarity movements. So I've seen quite frequently when people talk about kind of queer activism, and also I guess this was coming from me writing op-eds and doing kind of opinion journalism, people wanted kind of very one-note stories. They wanted to talk about like a trans military ban, or they wanted to talk about this new ad campaign, is this queer baiting, just all this stuff that I was a bit like, can we not go deeper than this, please? And I think this book was kind of really born of frustration. It was also born of this desire to really write something that felt hopeful. I think we all kind of feel hopeless a lot. There is just so much in the world and we're constantly kind of bombarded with information. So I think that this was really my attempt to kind of comb through history and look at the kind of movements that had been just lesser discussed, to look at this kind of queer activist history that wasn't being talked about super often. And it was really rooted in solidarity. So looking at queer activists that had formed, these coalitions across lines of disability justice, anti-racism, reproductive justice. And yeah, the book actually became really cathartic to write, which I kind of didn't really expect, but I just kept coming back to this idea of hope and also kind of reconciling my own identity as like a queer working class person. I didn't get to write about class very often because people would just like stick to just writing about the queer stuff. And I was like, yeah, but there's so much more to it. And yeah, so I'm going to read a little bit from the introduction. And it's kind of the mission statement of the book. Kind of gives like a brief timeline, but the book actually starts in the 60s and moves forward to the present day. And it was a mammoth task, like a really huge task. So it feels really good to be shortlisted because it makes me feel like I've done it justice, which I was terrified about. So thank you to everybody. Okay. The 1990s saw ad executives target affluent LGBTQ plus people as potential consumers, and they weren't exactly subtle about trying to win them over. At one point, Subarus were basically the lesbian car. So we got some visibility, but vast swathes of queer culture were defanged. There was no mention of groups like ACT UP, the Gay Liberation Front, and quirky protest groups like Drag Nun Troop, Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Instead, we got a distinctly polished era of gay visibility, one in which we were either tolerated or very occasionally celebrated, when we could be profitable or teach hapless straight men how to dress, introducing them to basic skincare. It's not just queer communities whose histories of activism have been sanitized, painted over with a glossy commercial sheen. The first time I saw the face of Che Guevara, a Marxist revolutionary, it was printed on a £20 t-shirt. Artist Frida Kahlo was a die-hard socialist who lived with physical disabilities and was openly bisexual, yet her legacy is often reduced to nothing but her eyebrows. You might hear about the Black Panthers, but it's unlikely you'll hear about the Rainbow Coalition, built in collaboration with working-class activists from various demographics, who were all being trampled by systems of capitalism, imperialism, and discrimination. The most radical moments in activist histories either get erased entirely or they're stripped of their thorns and packaged as commodities to be bought and worn without context. Especially in today's era of social media and platform capitalism, there's unlimited potential to monetize activism. As Emma Dabiri writes in her incisive book-length essay, What White People Can Do Next, From Allyship to Coalition, much of the present anti-racist conversation is devoid of class or capitalism, which it seems to have largely replaced with interpretations of interpersonal privilege. We can apply similar critiques to recent discussions of so-called queer issues, which leave little to no room for nuance. For the last 2 decades in particular, mainstream media has homed in on various topics, from same-sex marriage and military transgender bans to queerbaiting, a term which describes apparently straight celebrities pandering to LGBTQ plus fan bases for profit, along with the endless question of which public toilets trans people should be allowed to use. These discussions are usually packaged in clickbait incendiary opinion essays by the same revolving door of identikit middle-class columnists who churn out divisive rhetoric to fan the flames of a so-called culture war. As a result, we rarely get critiques filtered through the lens of anti-imperialism or anti-capitalism. Instead, we get today's cruel media landscape, which forces trans people to debate people fighting to strip them of even basic human rights. It's an approach which perpetuates harm against us, while simultaneously denying us the right to meaningfully engage in wider political discussion. I think that's probably all I've got time for. But yeah, thank you so much again. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, everyone. And yeah, congratulations to everybody on the shortlist. I will hand over to Mira, who will announce the winner.
Everyone. Okay, deciding on the shortlist was challenging this year. Submissions were of an incredibly high standard, and reaching the long list required a lot of debate, which only intensified during the shortlisting process. I've learned a lot from each title on the shortlist, and so have all the judges, regularly quoting sections of the books in the bookshop and in social situations. And yes, I am just that compelling at parties. Each shortlisted book was at least one judge's top three, and for that reason, the meeting to decide the winner was divided until Christina reminded us that we could have two winners. So we have two winners. Each winning book will receive half the prize money. We chose these two winners for very specific reasons. One, because one was doing something so relevant and important within the UK, and one doing something that really needed to be talked about, like in a global way. In alphabetical order, to announce the winners, and hopefully each of the winners would like to say a little something. Intervals by Marianne Brooker, published by Fitzcarraldo, and Pleasure Gardens, Blackouts, and the Logic of Crisis in Kashmir by Scar Arundhati Thomas and Isabella Scott, published by Mac. Marianne, would you like to say a little something?
Wow, thank you. That's incredible. I really didn't expect that, and it feels also very perfect and brilliant to share the award as well. So just a huge thank you. I also think that I was thinking just as I was listening to people that the award of Bread and Roses feels so perfect for this book, which is so much about like the bread, that what sustains us, that like I really wanted it to be about material things that we need to live and that we need to remember through debates that are happening in the UK at the moment, and the roses, like what makes things beautiful for us and how we connect with one another. And it's it just feels a massive pleasure and a real honor to accept this. So thank you, and thank you to Fitzcarraldo, thank you to authors, booksellers, everyone who's read the book and sent me a nice message about it. It makes me feel less alone. Thank you to everyone I've done organising with as a new writer. So just radiating thanks. I'll stop rambling and hand over to the others.
Arundhati and Sky and Isabella, please.
Wow,
Wow.
thank you so much.
Yeah, wow, thank you so much. This is such a wonderful honor to joint win. I'm so glad to win it with you, Marianne, and also as co-writers. It's such a special thing. Yeah, wow. I feel really lost for words. Something that we didn't get into in the introduction is the way in which the book thinks about the relationship between India and Israel, and by that comparison between Kashmir and Gaza. When we finished we finished writing the book just in October 2023, and the book ends with a kind of epilogue speaking about Gaza and those atrocities that were emerging in October and obviously still ongoing. So it's really special to kind of have this book win this award at this time, and also to kind of say, to speak now about Palestine and about Gaza and about this book that kind of tries to tease out some of these kind of international deeper links between the kind of military industrial complex. I'll pass over to you, Sky.
Yes, I mean, the book reached a turning point actually on the subject of drones when I realized that India had signed these kind of large deals with Israel and normalized relations after our last war with Pakistan. And it was all for drones. And so I traveled up to the LOC, which is the border between India and Pakistan, to see where those drones were employed. And someone told me about how I must especially watch out for the Israeli barbed wire, because that's the one that would take off a finger. And that's kind of led us onto this much longer journey of realizing what the actual subject is about. And it's so amazing that you chose this book, that you read it, that so many people read it, and now you've kind of awarded it this prize, because it's such a it takes such a sharp focus into one region, one history, one nuance. It's so like, I don't know, it's so contextual. I guess one of the fears we've had is that we didn't try to make it more understandable. We wrote a very difficult book about a very lesser known place, and we didn't do any hand holding. And it's kind of amazing that we managed to have it read. So thank you for that. Thank you for making me making me feel as an Indian writer that we don't have to dumb down the story, I guess. So thanks.
Thanks so much. I think that kind of brings us to the end of the event. I'll say something and then I'll hand over to Mira to close. Just it's been a real honor getting to run the administration for the prize again this year. And yeah, I'm just really excited to get to continue shouting about the shortlisted and the winning books in the bookshops. It was also really important to us, as Mira said at the start, to also highlight the large and small presses that are doing that are publishing this radical work. And I'm just excited for all of the bookshops in the Alliance of Radical Booksellers, but also beyond that to get to stock them all. But yeah, congratulations to Sky and to Isabella and to Marianne. And I'll hand over to Mira to close.
Yeah, we're also finding in the bookshop and like more widely that people are wanting to read disruptive literature, and people are really coming in for nonfiction to be more informed, and that's why I mean, like with each of your books, with each of the shortlisted titles, they're so relevant to what's happening right now in society, and they are disrupting, and that conversation about not accepting the conventional note and opting for safety, I think is really critical in each of your writings, and developing nuance. And Sky, you used that word nuance when it came with your book, but I think it's relevant to each and every one of the books on the list. And as I said again and again, it's been an absolute pleasure reading it, reading each of your books, and every one of the judges has said this over and over again. Thank you all.
Thanks so much. I think I can't end it without ending I'll end the live stream without ending the Zoom. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for coming. Congratulations again to everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Congrats.
Take care.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Well done. Bye.
Bye. Okay.